I was just posting right outside of the vehicle, and an LAV rolled up next to us and ran over a landmine, blew one of their tires off, and it smacked the 7-ton like 2 feet away from me. Hey, my name is Christopher Cendana. I grew up in Northern California. I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years, from 2004 to 2008 as a 3521 diesel mechanic. And I got out as a sergeant, and yeah, man, spent most of my time turning wrenches. So my childhood upbringing, I was born in Fremont, California, which is up in the Bay Area. And I was raised by my mom. She was a single mom. And around 4 years old, she met my stepdad, who came into the picture, and he's been there ever since. And man, I kind of grew up skateboarding, man. I got my first skateboard at 5, and that's kind of where I spent most of my time. When I think back on my childhood, it seems really hazy, and the only things that really stand out are when I was skating. You know, there's a couple birthdays and Christmases here and there, but really that's it, man. We kind of moved around a lot. Grew up in this house in Fremont, and then moved to another house in Fremont. I never stayed at a school for its recommended amount of time. Like, you know, you got an elementary school that's like K through 6, and then a junior high that's like 7 and 8, and, you know, high school and so on. Every one of those schools, I dipped out like somewhere in between, started another elementary school, you know, left this junior high for another junior high, left this high school for another high school. And at 14, my dad got his job transferred from the Bay Area out to Michigan. And just being like a sense of change, I was kind of looking forward to it. Like, hey, you know, it's going to be something new. It's a new place. I'm going to get to meet new people. I was optimistic about it, you know. And then this was in '99, I think. And we hop off that plane, and I'm wearing shorts and a T-shirt, and we step off, and it's like in the middle of the biggest fucking storm that they've had in a decade. And I'm looking around like, man, what the fuck did I just get myself into? Not that I had a choice or anything, you know, because I'm going with my family, but man, it was a severe change in my life, you know? And it's interesting. That's the first time I ever experienced any like real racism, was being out in Michigan, you know? And what's funny about that is I didn't even realize that it was happening until my dad told me it was happening. So like the whole time I'm there, like I got lucky enough to meet like a group of skaters, and they kind of took me in, and you know, and we would skate. That's what we do. That's the good thing about skateboarding. It's like, it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. You skate, we're gonna skate. But there were just those other people in the school, you know. I think I was like one of the only brown kids. Really? I'm sure there was like a handful of other ones that I'd see like around the school, but I was the only tan kid coming from California, you know, so that kind of just like painted me in a certain way to certain people. I think there was this, I was walking through like the cafeteria, and I was wearing a shirt that said America, which is a skateboard shoe brand, you know, and this dude, this just like big jock dude, like stopped me. He was like, hey, what the fuck is that shirt? Like extremely butthurt, like off the bat. And I'm like, oh, it's a shoe company, America, you know? And I was like, and he was like, no, that shit's spelled with an A. And I'm like, yeah, man, that's the country. It's the country we live in. This is a shoe company. And that fucking pissed him off, man. And like, he looked at me like just so hard, like just burning holes in my eyes. And he was like, get the fuck out of my face before I kill you. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, this place sucks.
Oh man. He thought you were kind of downgrading America, huh?
Yeah, that's exactly what he thought, you know? But I don't know. I feel like I was a pretty good kid, generally, you know, aside from like, you know, you can't skate here, fuck off kind of thing. Found myself in handcuffs maybe a few times just for like vandalism, which was basically just like, you know, skating, tearing up some ledges here and there. But yeah, not like any real trouble. I was like, I feel like I was a pretty good kid.
Yeah.
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 So what inspired me to join the Marine Corps was, one, my best friend, Justin. He was the first one that mentioned joining the military and the Marine Corps specifically. So I was just kind of like, that's cool, man. Let me see what it's about. Because at that point, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I mean, I know we just talked about getting in trouble, but this doesn't really apply to that. But I used to cut school a lot. Like, I would just dip out and, like, I'd go to school, immediately leave school, and then just go home later on. And then just one day I got a call from my mom, and she was like, hey, I just got a call from your school. They told me how much you've been absent, and it's bullshit, so I'm taking your ass out, and you're going to continuation school. And I'm like, oh, all right. I guess I'm going to continuation school. So I wasn't on the track for like college, you know, and I didn't have any real idea of what I wanted to do. So, you know, trade school wasn't really an option for me. I think for a while I wanted to be like a paramedic or a firefighter, but, you know, those things didn't really go anywhere. So I went with them to the recruiting station, and I met the recruiters, and you know those Marine recruiters, man. They'll fucking tell you what you want to hear, snag you up, and everything that they said just sounded so appealing.
Yeah.
And me being a dude that had no sense of direction at the time, you know, I kind of felt like this is something worth exploring. So I did. Oh, so to go back to the Michigan, like, I was just miserable out there. And that kind of bled into the family dynamic. So I think my dad had another opportunity to come back to California, and given, you know, how miserable I was, and I'm very grateful for this, he moved us back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you enlisted from California?
From California,
got
yeah.
Got it. Yeah, talk to me about your recruiting experience.
So for the recruiting experience, I don't really remember anything specific that they said. I just remember them being some fucking cool guys, you know, like you paint a picture of a Marine, and that's kind of who I saw in these recruiters, and they were just so down to earth and normal people to me, but yet they still kind of they held that demeanor of you know, a war fighter that's gone and done some shit, and now he's here doing this, and it's just like, man, these guys have their shit together, you know. So I joined the delayed entry program, and the job that I wanted, which was originally I wanted to go ordnance, and I found out through the recruiting process that I was a little colorblind. So, you know, they don't want a guy like me cutting wires out there, you know.
Yeah.
So then it turned into motor T, diesel mechanic, and then the drop date for that was like way out. So I was in the delayed entry program for like 6 months, and during that time, I started to get like, I started to experience things from like outside of the Marine Corps. You know, I started hanging out at like colleges and going to college parties, and so there was like a second there where I called my recruiter, and I was like, "Yo, I don't think this is going to go down. Like, I'm not supposed to leave for another 4 months, and I'm having a good time. And if you test me right now, it's going to come back dirty. Maybe, I don't know, possibly not." So I actually got out of the delayed entry program for a little bit, and then kind of experienced a little more life and saw what things could be if I kind of stayed on that path. I had friends that were getting into trouble like left and right. I'm just really glad that I had a pretty good parental foundation.
What kind of trouble were they getting into?
They were just getting into different drugs and just like selling drugs and doing, I mean, nothing major. Like, you know, I think the biggest thing that one of my friends got into was like Grand Theft Auto. But, you know, I just saw people going down a path that I didn't see myself going down. But I was with all these people, so I didn't really want to take a chance on that. And I called the recruiter back up, and I was just like, "Hey, will you guys take me back?" You know? And sure enough, they did. And then, like, I think it was like a month. They weren't taking any chances. They're like, "We're gonna get you in, and you're gonna fucking go." I was like, "That's exactly what I need." So, like, I think within like 3 weeks, I was out.
Did you ever entertain any of the other branches?
I talked to a Navy recruiter once, just because there were people in my family that went Navy. Filipino families, you either come from the Navy or you're a nurse. So I went and chatted up with them, but then I came to the conclusion, like, man, if I'm gonna do this, like, I'd like to do something cool with some cool people. Mm-hmm. And I saw that in the Marine Corps, so that's why I went that way. I talked to an Army recruiter for like 10 minutes, and this was after I was like, in the delayed entry program and got out, and like nothing that they said was appealing to me after talking to the Marine recruiter. So no offense to all the Army guys out there, I love you guys, but boot camp was boot camp. For a long time, I stepped on those yellow footprints thinking I had made the biggest mistake in the world. And that feeling kind of stayed with me like for a really long time, even through MOS school. But boot camp, like, they say they're gonna break you down to build you up, and they really do, like, not just like mentally is huge, physically is huge, but they also make you look like a fucking dork, like all the time, And I just always thought that was funny. Mm-hmm. You see these fucking badass Marines in their gear and they look snazzy, and then you see a recruit, boots unbloused, top button all done up, and you just look like an idiot. Mm-hmm. I felt like an idiot. Everywhere I went, I got talked to like an idiot. So like the whole time I was like, man, I got to go through 4 years of this at least.
Yeah.
So that was that. I never got held up in boot camp. Like you'd experience, dudes that get hurt and end up in like MRP or whatever, and you see them crutching around the depot for like months, and you're like, damn, that fucking sucks for that guy, because I want to get out of here right now, and I've only been here for like 3 weeks. This dude's been here for 3 months. So, there was this one drill instructor, Staff Sergeant Jordan. The character in most of the Adam Sandler movies, like the big guy, like, mm-hmm. He talks like that. Like, this was him. Like, looked like him, talked like him. It was him. And we had this one dude in the platoon, and he was like the one. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. The one who always fucks up, and if it's gonna be anyone's fault, it's this dude. And another recruit was fucking with him, and that drill instructor thought it was me. And so I was walking through the head one day, and he was like coming straight at me, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just fucking gang way for this guy. And he pushed me so hard that my feet flew up, and I landed on the back of my head and my shoulders, and it knocked the wind out of me because I wasn't expecting that, And that happened, and I'm like, man, I really want to fucking go home. This shit's fucking terrible, And aside from like, just your traditional ass chewings and everything like that was probably the most I ever got fucked with. But he actually apologized for that. Really? Surprisingly. He came up to the side and he's like, hey, I know that wasn't you. That was fucked up what I did. I'm sorry. I was like, wow. Aye, sir. And he was like, now get the fuck out of my face. So after boot camp, I went over to North Carolina at Camp Johnson. And went through MOS school over there for diesel mechanics. North Carolina is a sticky place. Mm-hmm. I actually got held up for like 3 months because the next schoolhouse didn't start for another 3 months. So I was just doing like base detail for 3 months, which really sucked, man, because you can't even start that timer, until you start your schooling. Mm-hmm. So I was just there, just doing nothing. And out in Jacksonville, North Carolina, there ain't shit to do out there. So, man, that just fucking dragged.
I think there's a strip club and a fucking Fred Ruckers.
That's it. The Cave. That's what the strip club was called. Yeah. Man. Yeah. But yeah, man, after that, that's when I got orders to Pendleton at 1st LAR. And it wasn't until I got into the fleet and into my unit that I really started like opening up to the Marine Corps. Honestly, up to that point, like I still felt like I fucked up.
Really?
And made a mistake.
Why? What things were making you feel like that?
It's kind of hard to say, man. I just never felt comfortable. I just never felt like I was in a place where I could just relax and be myself. And that just kind of irked at me.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that there's a lot of guys who can just, adapt to their environment really easily. And I wish I was one of those, but I'm not. And it just made it really hard for me, and growing up with my mom, just in the beginning, just me and her, like, I think that turned me into kind of a mama's boy, which I have no shame in admitting. I love my mom, but like, I'd be out there and I'm like, man, I wish I was at home in my bed doing my thing and just like not having to be here with these fucking people doing this bullshit. The day we dropped into our unit, there was 4 of us that came from the schoolhouse in North Carolina. And we got there after they had already got back from deployment. So like half the platoon was already out on leave. And there was only just a skeleton crew just back at the shop, And so those were the dudes that we met first. And all of them were pretty cool. One of my best friends today was one of the dudes that kind of pulled us in and kind of took us around the unit to get all our shit checked off, And I think the only time I got fucked with was when I brought it upon myself, because I walked out of my barracks room and one of the guys was like, "Who the fuck's this guy?" And I'm like, well, so before I say this, like, being a mechanic, like, in the motor T, you got mechanics and you got operators. And there were all these operators, but like, there are only a handful of mechanics. So like, I kind of put myself in a special place, if that makes sense, So he's like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" And I'm like, "I'm the new mech." Like, I said it like that. Saying it now, I'm like, dude, what the fuck kind of cringy ass shit is that to say to this guy, And he looked at me and was like, "Oh," and like, as soon as he did that, I was like, I'm a fucking idiot. like, why did I do that? But that was the extent of being fucked with. Like, even when all the guys came back, they were all really cool and welcoming, which I was kind of surprised because I had heard horror stories about how things could be. So that's why I feel like I got lucky with that, Yeah, so the camaraderie was definitely there. The only thing is I didn't nurture that camaraderie most of the time. Like, when we secured for the day, I was gone. Like, I went out in town. Like, I had some friends in San Diego. I literally would take my camis off and leave the Marine Corps behind. And I would just go out and just be me and be around people that weren't Marine Corps oriented. And I regret that, because although I did make a really tight, small group of friends, I missed out on a lot, just like hanging out in the barracks, just drinking some beers or whatever, or going out in town with the guys. Like, I didn't do that. I wasn't open enough to embrace that part of that specific time in my life, and I wish I had. So we did 2 deployments, Iraq both times, Al Anbar province. First time we were at Camp Korean Village, which is like right around, the Jordan-Syria border. And actually, I got stuck there twice. The second deployment, the unit went out to, I think, Rawa was the base. And we got detached to one of the line companies to stay over at KV to run ops out of there. So I went back to KV the second time. But that was kind of a trip, man. And it's interesting because, I was saying that I never felt in place in the Marine Corps. But when we were in country, I was able to relax and kind of find my groove there. And it might have been because, this is what I initially signed up for. This is what we have been training for. Here's the culmination of all of that. I think that might be why I was able to find some kind of comfort, slash groove in my life, But a lot of downtime, definitely. And
as a motor T unit or first LAR, with the job that you have, do you guys do a workup before going overseas?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the How did you feel about, getting ready to preparing to go to Iraq in your specific position?
The only thing, when we were getting ready to go out, I don't remember having any like fear or anything about like what could happen out there. I think, it was just kind of what we were all expecting. Like we knew we were going to go. It's in the books, we're going to go. When I first checked into the unit, they just got back. Guaranteed we're going to go. So that was always in my mind. So when we were training, I was in the training and I stayed in the training. So I think the only thing that kind of burdened me was just like being away from my family, was how my family was going to feel while I was out, because I knew that they'd be back here worrying. I think that's the only thing that kind of had any type of burden on my shoulders. The first deployment being in Iraq was a culture shock once we started going out. You know what? It was a shock instantly as soon as we stepped off the plane, because it was fucking hot as hell out there. And you go to grab a water bottle from this pallet of water, and all the fucking water bottles are nearly boiling as soon as you drink them. So that was the first like shock to me when we first got in country. But then, once we changed out with the unit we were replacing and started operating, that's when the culture shock hit. When you actually get to see how other people live, how third world countries are, the smells, very interesting. And we spent a lot of time in the beginning just kind of, getting the shop ready, and I would do my MOS. I'd work on the trucks and do this and that. Once we started going out and patrolling, some of us would get attached to the line companies. We'd go out on raids with them. Every time we left the wire, I was a machine gunner. So it was just always interesting to see everything from that point of view, from behind a 50 cal. And, for a good half of the deployment, everything was just routine. But then we went on this field op out in Barwana, and out there is like, you get used to seeing just like desert forever, just desert, and then you get to a town like Barwana, which is right along the Euphrates River, and you don't expect to see so much green out there. You don't expect to see so many palm trees, and the sunsets out there are ridiculous. And I really enjoyed that part of it, because it was something so out of the ordinary from what I was used to seeing in every other part of Iraq that I've been to. And interestingly enough, we set up this blockade at the edge of town as the rest of the company went in for the raid, and we were just kicking back, holding this roadblock with one of the platoons. And we were out there for a good 10, 11 days and didn't see or hear a fucking thing. It was just crickets, man. And one day I see this one dude chilling in the back of LAV, cooking up some spaghetti that he pulled out of some shack. Then we start taking some fucking heavy ass fire, man. There was one ricochet. Just boom, you guys fucking popping off MRE bombs again, or what's up? And then it just starts fucking pouring on us. And leaving the wire from the fob that we were at KV, there's a big ass sign. And it says, "Complacency kills. Is today your day?" That thing is burned into my mind. Because over those 10 days of seeing nothing, hearing nothing, practically doing nothing but watch, man, complacency is heavy, and it's gonna fucking get you. And I think if we would have been out there one more day and then they decided to send some rounds towards us, it would have been a different story. But even on that day, you had people hustling to put their shit back on because you get so comfortable out there, But man, as soon as that thing started, people talk about adrenaline being a drug, and they're not lying, man. Once you feel that, and you experience it and you're like in it, it is a drug. The way the body reacts to that, it's insane, man. So we start taking fire, you know, we're underneath this train bridge that goes over the Euphrates. The Euphrates is like maybe, I'd say 50 yards away from us, separated by palm groves. They're firing from the palm groves at us. And it was just us and 2 LAVs at the time, 2 LAV 25s. And it just started to get really, really heavy. And I think we were in the firefight for like a good 10 minutes before we start hearing that LAV buzz coming from down the road. And then luckily we get 2 more LAVs and they set up, and like you think about being in a firefight and you're like, man, like you see it in movies, it's like, that shit's fucking, it's fucking rad, you know, it's fucking heavy. But once you get 2 like 25 fucking talking guns going, just doop, 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 doop. Doop, 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 doop. You're like, shit, it's fucking going down out there, you know? And yeah, that was quite the experience, man.
Did you get an opportunity to put that 50 cal to work?
So the thing that sucks about that is when we were pulling into town, the driver of the 7-ton that we were in, we were only operating with basic night vision goggles. And we were entering this town on top of this berm, and one of the LAVs trying to help us out turned on a white light, and it flushed out the driver's night vision goggles, and we fucking rolled off that berm.
Oh.
I'm like I'm on top, you know, behind the machine gun, and I'm just like, oh shit. Like that feeling of like your buddy pushing you in a shopping cart and the fucking shopping cart tumbles over. You have no control over that. You're just going with it. Like this is a big ass fucking shopping cart. Just rolling down this berm, fucking 50 cal swings and fucking knocks me in the head, pops off the fucking turret altogether. Oh. We gotta fucking, like we're in it upside down, all fucking turn around, engine's still running. Like I'm trying to figure out where I am and tell the driver like, yo, kill the engine. And it took us like 5 minutes just to find our way out of the vehicle, you know? So for the rest of the op, like, no 50 cal for me. You know, so that was that, man. Yeah. So luckily, you know, we had the support come in from those 2 extra LAVs. So
nice. So it happened. This was at night. Obviously, it happened.
The firefight?
Yeah.
No, it was broad daylight.
It was daylight.
We rolled at night.
Oh, you rolled at night.
And then we set up that blockade, and then we were there for that 10 days.
Okay.
And then it was like, yeah, right after like noon chow.
Yeah.
Popped off. After that, I wanted more. That adrenaline, man. I wanted that adrenaline again. And I felt like that's what I was there to do. Like all that training, that's what we just got to use. Let's fucking do it again. But, you know, I was a pogue. So I'm not going out on patrols with these guys. I'm usually just kicking back where we are, you know? So after that, like, I think the next day, I think we heard like a few more pop shots from the distance. And like immediately I'm like, yes, let's go again. I'm ready, you know? But it turned out to be nothing, so. But yeah, man, I was ready for more. Yeah, so after that, field op, came back to KV, kind of settled in for a little bit, and then I got attached to a guard platoon, and we would do daily patrols around the base. And there was one day that we set up a small blockade for another line company that was coming back through. I don't know what they were doing or why they had to set the blockade up, but it was on like the main MSR that was out there. And this white Suburban starts approaching us. So we go through all our escalation of force, waving the hands. No, you can't fucking come here. All right, he's still coming. Pop some pyro. Pyro goes up. Pyro goes at him. Still coming. All right, fucking shots to the sides of the vehicle. Get their attention. So we had some dudes on the ground firing 5.56 at him, just trying to let him know, like, dude, you cannot come over here. You're going to get lit up. And they just kept on coming. So the platoon commander was like, hey, let's start opening that 50 cal up towards the engine. I started opening up the 50 cal towards the engine, and I got maybe 1 5 to 6 round burst until the fucking thing jammed. So I was literally shot and rack, just trying to get them to stop. And then it finally came like to the point where he wasn't going to stop. This is probably a VBIED, so let's fucking switch it on. And then everyone just started opening fire. 50 cal magically started working again. And the vehicle rolled up to us. We were on one side of the road. They were coming down the other. And it stopped literally parallel to us on the other side of the road at the median. And I remember ducking behind the armor that was up at the top of the turret, waiting for a blast to go off, and it never did. Come to find out, it was just this family that had no idea what the rules of engagement were and what the escalation of force meant. It was an innocent family. Kids, women. And before the vehicle actually stopped at the median, like you saw dudes tumbling out. Like, okay, if we keep going, we're gonna these people are gonna kill us. Our only chance right now is to just roll out of the vehicle. Like 3 or 4 people died. We took everyone back to the base for, to get help. And we had 2 bodies in the back of ours that didn't make it. And I just remember rolling back to the base. Yeah, they're fucking there. And it's just like, damn.
From that Suburban.
Yeah.
Why the fuck wouldn't they didn't realize they were being shot at?
I ask myself that question every time that part of my life pops into my head. I have no idea. So the second deployment went back to the same place. The only difference is that KBR installed a chow hall. Which was pretty damn cool,
Hell yeah.
We were living fat out there. But man, aside from going out with the line company we were attached to, kind of doing the same thing as the first deployment, we didn't really see anything. I didn't really see anything like I did on my first one. It was pretty uneventful.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in the gym, a lot of time at the phone center. Because, since we were detached, I had 2 trucks to take care of. That's not hard to do. So that was it, man. We got back, and I picked up sergeant like a month after we got back. And then I decided that, when I get out, I want to go to school and become a nurse. So I put in a school cut package, which was like unheard of at the time for that unit. Like the dude who was, in the company office who's in charge of putting that package together and submitting it, he was like, this is my first school package, so this will be interesting. So I ended up getting out 3 months early on a school cut. And then I started going to school, man. And I really think that helped my transition because I had something that I jumped into immediately. Like I think I got out, and the next week I was in orientation.
Nice.
So that I feel like what a lot of people have trouble with is they get out and they're back home and there's nothing to do. You have a lot of time to think. And once you get in your head, I think that's when people start running into trouble. So.
Did there ever come a point where you struggled at all mentally from the military, or was your transition just pretty smooth the whole time?
It was pretty smooth. I didn't start having any of that trouble until honestly, 3 or 4 years ago. I really think that hopping right into something helped me to not go through some of that mental anguish that a lot of my friends have gone through.
What started to come up 3 to 4 years ago?
Financial hardship, a possible change in career paths, personal relationship shit that was going on. There was a time where I felt like anything that was going to go wrong, it was going to happen, and that kind of being in that state of mind kind of just like, it opened the window to just a bunch of other negative things that I hadn't even thought of, like since I was in. I started having dreams about either being on deployment or getting ready to go on deployment. Like, you know, you can already feel the tension of separation in the family. Or the dreams of me being on deployment weren't even necessarily like combat related. You're just like there, but you can feel how much it sucks being there. And I think that's when a lot of those situations started creeping in on my psyche, like the incident that happened with that white Suburban, or that rollover. There was one more thing that happened on that first deployment.
Oh yeah?
If you want to hear about it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
It was at the tail end. We were actually getting ready to roll out of Barwana. And we pulled up on this line on the outside of town, and I got out of our new 7-ton. They hooked us up with a new MTVR with up armor, getting ready to roll back, you know. And I was just posting right outside of the vehicle, and an LAV rolled up next to us and ran over a landmine, blew one of their tires off, and it smacked the 7-ton like 2 feet away from me. Oof. Like, I got a picture where I'm just like covered in dust, just like, fuck, you know. And that was interesting.
Wow.
You know, just the thought of like a little bit more this way.
Yeah, man.
That was it.
Oof.
You know?
Wasn't your time.
It wasn't my time, thankfully.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I started getting all these dreams, and all those experiences started coming back into my thoughts way more often than they did before. And it was interesting because I didn't think it would happen like that. You know, I thought I would, as soon as I got out, I would immediately start thinking about these things, and it would just like hit me all at once, you know? I wasn't expecting like a late creeper like that. Sometimes I'll talk to my wife about it, but right now I actually have a pretty good support system of veterans, you know, with the group of guys that I was in with, and the TNR guys. We're really there for each other when it comes to stuff like that. So I feel like I can open up to them and talk about those things, which I feel like really helps.
Yeah, big time, man. Yeah, speaking of that, man, talk to me about what you have going on now and that support system that you just mentioned.
Yeah, so right now I get to be creative for a living, which is amazing. I'm making content for a skateboarding company, which falls right in line with my interests of filmmaking and skateboarding. So that's been a really fun ride. I'm approaching some changes right now with that. I'm going to start kind of making content for things outside of skateboarding. I'd like to tell some different stories. I'd like to cover some different industries and different topics. So that's going to be coming up within the next like couple months here.
Nice.
But yeah, man, having those guys and working with those guys on a daily basis, it really helps with the mental health situation. You know, because you always have someone there that went through similar experiences, which I think is like night and day to just like trying to take care of it by yourself. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's an organization that we're a part of called 6 Feet Above, and you can find us at 6feetabove.org. And it basically, we host retreats almost monthly, and we bring veterans together who have an interest in skateboarding. And there's a big emphasis on mental health, but there's just as big of an emphasis on skateboarding. So we take time to talk about the importance of mental health, talk about communicating your mental health, and we also just get together and skate, which is awesome because you're bringing, you know, to have one thing in common with a person is one thing, it's great, but to have two things in common is, you know, double the power. You know what I mean? And we're definitely able to do that with 6 Feet Above.
Nice.
Yeah. And as far as like any advice for people getting ready to transition, or even people who are still in, For people who are still in, I would say to practice living in the moment. I spent a lot of my time just waiting to get out, and I missed out on a lot of shit. So a good thing that I go by these days is to embrace the suck. Embrace the suck and be in the moment. It's only temporary.
Right. Go ahead.
And for the guys that are getting out, I know it's easier said than done, but have a plan. Even if it's a simple plan. Even if it's the day after you EAS, what are you going to do that next day? And have it ready to go.
I think it's awesome, man. I think it's awesome what you guys are doing. And I love watching your guys' content and your little skits, man, and stuff, dude. So
I appreciate that.
Awesome, Chris. Thanks for being here, brother.
And thank you for having me.
Really appreciate you coming and taking a seat and sharing your story, man. It's a big deal for Urban Valor, so we really appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, likewise.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I got bad thoughts that make my mind scared. Hold me hostage and they don't fight fair. Who gon' pray for me and wipe on my tears? Who gon' save me if you not right here? Move this darkness and make my sight clear. Take me your way cause I don't like here. Ghosts of my past, they fill in the night air. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares.